You are looking for death and 9th level intermediate T-Spirit Master. If you dare to challenge my pressure, you deserve to die. You deserve to die. Scott looked angry. The Law God chain he had received was actually taken away. He was so angry that his mind was in confusion. He had no other thoughts except one thought that kept echoing, that is, to kill Jason and take back the Law God chain. Die. Scott yelled angrily, and a monstrous spiritual power rose up from his body. Suddenly, the color of the world changed, as if the end of the world was coming, and the infinite spiritual power was all violent, and he was almost hit. He raised his black sword and slashed it down with lightning speed towards where Jason was. World-destroying knife, destroy all ages. A majestic voice came from Scott's mouth. The black sword in Scott's hand suddenly projected a misty black knife shadow, as if a black mountain peak stood proudly in the world, covering the sky and the earth. To Jason. In order to regain his own Law God chain, if nothing happened, Scott used one of his most powerful tricks as soon as he was surprised, trying to kill Jason in one move. In the void, terrible flame spiritual power surged. In order to prevent Jason from escaping, when Scott used Destruction of Eternity, there were countless flaming sword lights, like raindrops all over the sky, covering the entire void, sealing spread the wings. Watermark locked all Jason's escape routes. However, what Scott didn't expect was that in the face of his powerful attack, Jason not only made no move to dodge, but instead moved towards him, waving the black épée in his hand, and struck out with just one strike. Hit himself. This Jason is really stupid. If he only focused on running away, I was worried that he would alert some spiritual beast or meet someone else, but I didn't expect that instead of running away, he would dare to attack me. He is looking for death. Scott sneered in his heart, and the black sword in his hand slashed down desperately, colliding hard with the black heavy sword swung by Jason. Boom! The terrible thunder resounded throughout the world instantly. Under the swing of Jason's black épée, the huge shadow of the black sword in Scott's hand rippled with atomic fluctuations, and then exploded with a bang. A black épée quietly pierced through the flames in the sky and came to Scott in an instant. What? Scott's eyes suddenly widened, and the black sword in his hand struck out again. The sword of the world, all things returned to ruins. On Scott Huzhong's sword, a thought of the original enemy rushed out, and the terrifying spiritual power spewed out from it like a spring, directly colliding with the black heavy sword stabbed by Jason. The swords collided together. Boom! A huge explosion sounded, and the terrifying spiritual power destroyed everything. Scott only felt an irresistible terrifying spiritual power, which was suddenly transmitted from the explosion and rushed into his body. Pfft! Blood soared in the void, and Scott was thrown heavily. His eyes were wide open, and his eyes were filled with anger. A puff of blood spurted out from his mouth, bloody and miserable. How can this Jason be so powerful? Scott's body was full of spiritual power, and he tried his best to stabilize his body in the void. His eyes were full of horror when he looked at Jason. The previous fight with Jason was completely beyond Scott's expectation. In Scott's imagination, Jason, who was a 9th level intermediate Holy Spirit Master, was unable to block a few attacks from himself, a 9th level advanced Holy Master, and would be killed. However, the reality was that Scott fell from heaven to hell in an instant. I don't believe it, it's not true. Scott shook his head, looking crazy. The temptation of the Law Divine chain made him completely lose his mind. Bang! Some kind of powerful energy was broken in Scott's body, and a blazing flame suddenly rose from his body. This flame turned from red to blue, from blue to purple, and finally from purple to white, turning the void is full of ripples. Die! Scott Wolf rushed towards Jason. Incineration of all things, incinerate all things one by one. Endless flames suddenly burst out from Scott's body, like a whirlwind, quickly sweeping through Jason. Crack! The flames that reached the extreme continued to burn, and were powerful enough to turn gold and stone into juice. In the endless flames, Scott held the world-destroying knife, and it turned into a stream of light and rushed directly towards Jason. The secret of incineration of all things? Snort. Amidst the blazing white flames, Jason's mouth couldn't help but burst into a sneer. Scott, let me show you what the real law of fire is. Jason sneered. His eyes suddenly opened. His aura surged. His black hair danced crazily. A terrifying breath of flames was suddenly released from his body. That terrifying breath was instantly released. The white flames that wrapped Scott around him were forced back. The Void God's fire melting technique, the Void God descended one by one, the molten light shone everywhere, and the fire sword burned the world. Jason shouted in a low voice, and a kind of ethereal flames quickly appeared on his body. As soon as these flames came out, the white flames that Scott had released before suddenly seemed to have seen the Emperor's courtiers, bringing them with them. With the will of panic, he backed away crazily. As soon as some white flames that could not be avoided came into contact with the void flame, they were immediately assimilated into virtual energy. Jason's figure was extremely tall, standing tall and tall, in the flames, facing Kurt slashed with his sword. Boom! Terrible coercion filled the world. Jason slashed with his sword, and endless flame laws erupted from his body. The rays of flames in the void twisted and rippled, glowing with a beautiful aurora. The flames, the giant sword and the flaming sword collided quickly. Boom! A terrible explosion sounded between the heaven and the earth. The endless spiritual 20 elements permeated everything. The powerful spiritual power swept through, turning the entire plain ground into ashes. In the scorched earth, nothing exists anymore. Pfft. In the collapsing flames, a figure covered in blood, scarred, and in a state of embarrassment suddenly shot out from it, with blood rushing from its mouth, and then turned into a stream of light and flew towards the depths of the battlefield of the gods. This figure, with blood constantly spraying on him and his clothes in rags, was none other than Scott. How could this Jason be so scary? How could it be? Thinking back to the powerful blow before, Scott couldn't help but tremble in his heart. Damn it, you actually took away my magical chain. It's really abominable. With Jason's strength, I'm afraid only the master of Atkinson Tower can kill him. But if the news is told to Atkinson Tower Lord, can I still get this fire-based law divine chain? As he fled, Scott felt extremely angry in his heart. Although extremely angry, Scott never dared to fight Jason again. Want to escape? Looking at Strut's fleeing figure from a distance, Jason's mouth showed a hint of disdain. Boom! A terrifying breath of fire burst out from his body. This breath was so terrifying, carrying destructive power. At the same time, an extremely tall flame silhouette suddenly appeared behind Jason. Virtual God's fire melting technique is the undefeated fighting method of Virtual God. Fire Lotus burns the sky. A huge flame lotus appeared quickly in the void, and then was lifted up by the tall shadow and blasted towards Scott. The huge flame lotus flashed across the void like lightning, and came to Scott in an instant. Next to Tay, the 8 petals of the flame lotus quietly opened, and then suddenly wrapped Scott's whole body in it. Ah! Scott let out a shrill roar, his eyes filled with fear, and the next moment he said, "Pung." In the fire lotus, Scott's whole body suddenly exploded and was instantly burned to ashes. Above the endless void, strong winds roared continuously, blowing up Jason's black robe and blowing his long black hair. In the distant sky, a fire lotus bloomed brilliantly, exuding a terrifying aura. However, Scott, the Lord of Evil, who was still fighting Jason before, completely fell, completely annihilated, and nothing was restored. Exist. This false god fire melting technique, like the Great Sun Ba Holy technique, is a powerful technique that Jason obtained after refining the law pillar of the Supreme Elder Assault of the Spiritual Master Tower. Among these, Jason continued to practice, and finally spent more than half a month to perfect the first 2 moves of the Virtual God fire melting technique. Although Jason has only mastered the first 2 moves, this false god fire melting technique is a technique of the ancient false god. It is extremely powerful. Although it cannot be compared with the god of war technique, god-destroying killing technique and other heaven-defying tactics, it is compared with the great Sun Ba holy technique and other techniques. They are much more powerful and extremely difficult to practice. In the entire Spirit Master Tower, over the past thousands of years, Isolde has only achieved a small amount of practice, but in the end it became cheaper. Jason. Huh. In the void, after killing Scott, Jason's expression was indifferent and he waved his big hand directly. Boom. Terrible spiritual power stirred up the world, and Jason's body suddenly erupted with a terrible pressure, instantly covering the flame lotus not far away. Bang! In the roar, the flame lotus quickly annihilated and disappeared. At the same time, a thick flame law was suddenly extracted by Jason. This flame law is extremely thick, and the mysterious laws are flowing on it, exuding an astonishing aura, and there is a faint aura of destruction coming out of it. Under normal circumstances, Jason would usually absorb the laws of a 9th-level advanced Holy Spirit Master like this, but this time, Jason just put Scott's powerful fire laws into the God of War Tower to preserve them. Up, but not absorbed. The next moment, Jason's eyes fell on a corner in the God of War space, and his thoughts moved at the same time. Boom! A divine chain of laws that shone with an astonishing fire aura had already appeared in Jason's hand. The tyrannical divine aura spurted out from it like a tide. That terrifying aura made Jason extremely shocked. This is a divine chain of laws with 15 fragments of divine principles. The 15 fragments of divine principles are connected in series like a necklace. On it, red streams of light flow. Each fragment of divine principles represents a kind of mystery in the law of fire, possessing unpredictable power. Is this the law god chain that stores all the law insights of a 10th-level spiritual god? No matter how kind-hearted Jason was, he was extremely excited at the moment. A complete law god chain can allow a 9th-level Holy Spirit Master to advance from a low-level 9th-level spiritual god to a 10th-level spiritual god. Although the law god chain in Jason's hand is damaged, at least a quarter of it is intact. The 3 parts are complete. What changes will happen if you completely refine it? Jason was excited, and without any hesitation, he suddenly used the heaven and earth refining technique, and drove the fire law divine chain into his body. Boom! As soon as the fire-type divine chain C was penetrated into Jason's body, the strange black power in Jason's body rioted like the last time it absorbed the fragments of the water-type divine law. Wow! The dormant black, strange power in Jason's body surged crazily like a flood that broke a bank, violently washing through Jason's meridians, and then submerged the entire complete chain of laws. Chi. Under the dissolution of the black strange power, the fire system's divine chain of laws was quickly refined. A large number of fire laws, like springs, continued to gush out from the chain of laws. Came out and quickly filled all the meridians in Jason's body. Ah! The terrifying fire spiritual power continued to burn, and Jason suddenly let out a low roar. His face quickly turned red, and the skin on his body was cracked, and a pool of blood spurted from it. Shooting out, the blood immediately started to burn as soon as it touched the air, and instantly turned into nothingness. For a moment, Jason felt as if countless ants were biting him, and the pain spread throughout Jason's body. How could it be? Jason gritted his teeth and roared in a low voice. The intense pain was a bit unbearable for him. The laws and divine aura contained in this law god chain are really terrifying. Under normal circumstances, it would take 6 9th-level Holy Spirit Masters 1 or 2 years, or even several years, to completely refine it, but under the refining of the strange black power in Jason's body, this fire law divine chain is melting at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the terrifying power of law gushing out from it seems to be suppressed. The long-lasting beast suddenly rushed into Jason's body, causing Jason extreme pain. Ah! Jason's face was distorted, his eyes were full of bloodshot eyes, and his body was convulsing involuntarily. The muscles on his body continued to crack and burst, and a large amount of blood flowed out. When these billions appeared in the air, they were in a hurry. What fell down burned and burned into nothingness. Boom! An extremely fierce will suddenly came to Jason's mind, causing the spiritual sea in Jason's mind to surge up, and intense pain stimulated Jason's nerves. However, when Jason was in extreme pain, the meridians in Jason's body also rapidly evolved under the impact of the law of fire. Jason's body instantly turned red, and scorching waves of air were discharged from his body. Is someone coming? Suddenly, Jason raised his head suddenly and looked at the distant sky. There, a black stream of light was flying over quickly. It was so fast that it was obvious that the strength of the person coming was at least 9th level. Senior Holy Spirit Master. Damn it! Jason's heart suddenly sank. There were more than 10 9th level Senior Holy Spirit Masters who entered the battlefield of the gods. Among them, only 4 were on Jason's side. It would be okay if they were the ones coming, if it is a strong man from other forces, then with Jason's current strength, the average 9th level high-level Holy Spirit Master is no match for him. Even a 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master like Atkinson Tower Master, he can't. He was afraid, but at this moment, he was absorbing the fire law in the law chain, and his body was in an extremely weak state. The energy dissipated from the law chain made it difficult for him to resist. It is almost about to collapse. Once it is attacked, the consequences will be disastrous. What should I do? Jason was thinking anxiously in his heart, and at the same time he struggled to control his body, trying to move downwards. However, it was because of his distraction that Jason almost lost consciousness in the spiritual sea. The strong impact of the law made him staggered, and blood overflowed from the corners of his mouth. Jason! The black shadow in the distance had already appeared in front of Jason again during this period of time. After seeing Jason, he couldn't help but exclaimed. This is an old man with gray beard and hair, and his eyes are deep, as if he has experienced endless vicissitudes. He is the great sage McGrady of the Salem Empire. McCready. When Jason saw the visitor, he was relieved immediately, and a hint of joy appeared in the corners of his eyes. Jason, are you refining fragments of divine law? After feeling the strong divine aura coming from Jason, McGrady's eyes suddenly widened and he made a sound of surprise, but the next moment, his eyes were full of doubts again. No, refining the fragments of the God's law should be a very gentle process. What's wrong with you? McGrady was extremely confused. Previously, he was carefully exploring a place hundreds of miles away. The aura of the battle between Jason and Scott attracted him, but he did not expect to see such a scene. McGrady, I will talk to you about the specifics after I finish refining. Jason spoke hurriedly, and immediately, the whole person entered the refining process again. McGrady nodded and didn't say much. Instead, he looked around vigilantly and guarded Jason. Time passed bit by bit, and the magic chain of laws in Jason's body quickly dissolved under the wash of the black strange power, and transformed into Jason's body, and the powerful fire laws were constantly transforming Jason. Body of flames were extinguishing on Jason's body from time to time. Every cell in Jason's body was being broken and reorganized. This was a kind of nirvana and rebirth. The whole process lasted for a long time, and the strange black power in Jason's body completely refined the divine chain of laws and disappeared. Just like when the fragment of the water divine law was refined, when the divine chain of law was completely refined, 15 strange runes exuding a terrifying divine aura suddenly appeared in Jason's body. However, because there was no fire spirit, because of the beads, these 15 strange runes were only stored in Jason's meridians and were not absorbed. Huh. In the sky, Jason let out a long breath. The wooden spirit beads in his mind were spinning rapidly, exuding a breath of life, which quickly healed his injuries. In Jason's perception, powerful fire spiritual power was flowing in his body. In addition, there was a completely different fire spiritual power. He didn't know where it came from. It was hidden deep in his meridians. The strange black power is leaning against each other. This fire spiritual power was extremely powerful. There seemed to be a wild giant beast dormant in it. The terrifying aura spread, making Jason faintly change his color. The 15 strange runes that appeared in the Law God chain, they are also gathered in the fire spiritual power, like fish flowing in the water. Jason, Hugh McGrady, who had been guarding Jason, was stunned when he felt the changes in Jason's body. Compared with when he first met Jason, in McGrady's perception, the Jason in front of him seemed to be different from before, but what exactly was different, McGrady had a hard time explaining. The battlefield of the gods was completely empty, without any vitality, like a restricted area of life. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the endless dark sky, there were 2 figures, flying past quietly, moving forward towards the deepest part of the battlefield of the gods. McGrady, be careful, there is a spiritual beast ahead, let's change lanes. Suddenly, one of the figures spoke out, and the 2 figures stopped in the void, then changed direction and bypassed this area. And where the 2 of them had bypassed the area, a terrifying spirit beast that was dozens of feet long and 10 feet tall, like a small hill, was lying there, sleeping soundly with its eyes closed. This is the Dark King Dragon Beast, a 9th level peak, close to a demigod on the last god's birthday. I saw with my own eyes a Dark King Dragon Beast that was about the same size as this one, and it tore apart a man in one bite. A 9th level advanced Holy Spirit Master. Looking at the terrifying spirit beast from a distance, McGrady looked at Jason and spoke with lingering fear. Jason also nodded with solemnity in his eyes, and he also felt a terrifying aura from the body of this terrifying spiritual beast that was difficult to ignore. Jason, I didn't expect your spiritual sense to be so sharp in this battlefield of gods. If it weren't for you, we might not have known how many dangers we would have encountered and how many life and death battles we would have experienced along the way. McGrady looked at Jason, he spoke with emotion. These 2 people were Jason and McGrady. At the beginning, after Jason completely absorbed the Law God chain, he exchanged information with McGrady and went to the depths of the central area together. From what McGrady said, Jason knew that the central area of the battlefield of the gods was extremely large, and the deeper it went, the more dangerous it would be, and the probability of the fragments of the gods appearing would increase. Therefore, when everyone entered the central area, after that, they will spend a certain amount of time to reach the deepest part of the central area, and then spend the remaining time there, devoting themselves wholeheartedly to the process of searching for the fragments of the gods' rule. After knowing the reason, Jason immediately went to the central area with McGrady. As for McGrady, UNB was also curious about what happened to Jason. Jason immediately told him everything that happened here. After McGrady learned that Jason actually killed Scott, he couldn't help but completely stunned. Scott is a 9th level advanced Holy Spirit Master and the strongest person in Sin City, one of the 9 major forces in the mainland. His strength is so strong that even McGrady, who is a destiny type, can only be said to be suppressed. Because of the shock of killing Scott, McGrady did not focus on what Jason got. He only thought that Jason had snatched a fragment of the god from Scott, and McGrady, he didn't ask, so he didn't say anything to Senior. In fact, what makes Jason depressed is that although he has absorbed almost the entire divine chain of laws, he has not been able to break through even the 9th level advanced Holy Spirit Master. He has never been able to break through that layer of obstacles. As a 5th level spiritual master, it seems that only when Gene can make a breakthrough in the 5 elements, he can be promoted. Otherwise, no matter how strong the perception and attainments of any one element are, as long as any one element has not reached a breakthrough state, it will be firmly restricted. However, although Jason failed to break through to the 9th level, the fire-type Law God chain gave him an unexpected surprise. After absorbing the Law God chain, Jason's spiritual consciousness had a major breakthrough. In the battlefield of the gods, the spiritual consciousness that was limited to a range of tens of meters has now suddenly increased to thousands of meters. This change has given Jason great convenience in the battlefield of the gods. Jason can often sense any danger from a distance and avoid it. In this way, Jason and McGrady hurried on quickly, and finally a month later, the two reached the deepest part of the central area. Hoo-ho! In front of Jason, there is an extremely empty plain. However, Jason can see at a glance that the far end, where the horizon is gray, and in the air in front of him, there were streaks of gray mist floating past, which was extremely weird. Here we are, here is the deepest ghost mist area, in the central area. Jason, let me warn you first. These gray mist are more terrifying. Once they are touched, even the 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master will not be able to withstand it. We have to be careful on the way down and don't touch this gray mist. McGrady's expression was extremely serious as he advised Jason. McGrady's words also made Jason feel trembling. Obviously, this gray mist must be extremely terrifying, otherwise McGrady would not have said this. However, Jason, because you are here, I feel a lot more relieved when I enter this gray fog area this time. Suddenly, McGrady changed the topic again and smiled. Huh? McGrady, what do you mean by that? Jason's brows couldn't help but reveal doubts. Jason, do you know why we keep saying that in this battlefield of the gods, elixir masters will have an advantage? McGrady showed a mysterious smile on his face. Jason was stunned. Indeed, before entering the battlefield of the gods, Jason had always heard that in this battlefield of the gods, elixir masters had an advantage over spiritual masters. Because of this, Master Atkinson Tower of the Spiritual Master Tower, even among geniuses the trial was designed to kill the Master Abyssfam Tower in order to prevent him from entering the battlefield of the gods. However, since entering the battlefield of the gods, Jason has not found any place where the elixir master has an advantage. But Jason didn't pay attention to it before, but now that McGrady brought it up, Jason suddenly couldn't help but express doubts. Is this gray fog? Jason looked forward, and a piece of gray fog about the size of his palm drifted just a few hundred meters in front of Jason. It immediately attracted Jason, making Jason his mind was completely integrated into it. With this investment, Jason suddenly discovered a strange thing. In his perception, these gray fogs seemed to have some mysterious connection with his spiritual consciousness. It seemed that his spiritual consciousness could control these gray fogs. McGrady on the side suddenly laughed. Yes, Jason, you tried to use the method of controlling elixirs in elixir science to induce these gray fog agents. McGrady guided Jason, but still, before he could finish his words, his expression suddenly showed panic. The gray mist that was hundreds of meters away from him and Jason suddenly changed its direction of movement strangely and slowly floated towards the two of them. Jason, back off. McGrady said hurriedly, but under his shout, Jason did not move. McGrady's face suddenly showed anxiety, but the next moment, he suddenly thought of something, and he couldn't help but froze. Jason, you can't control this gray fog, right? McGrady looked at Jason with horror in his eyes. While McGrady was extremely horrified, Jason at this moment devoted himself wholeheartedly to controlling the gray mist. This sense of ghost Jason's spiritual consciousness was like an invisible hand, controlling the gray mist. Under Jason's control, the gray mist suddenly seemed to become a part of his body. There was a feeling of being driven by an arm, and at the same time, Jason also discovered that the strange black power in his body was slowly consumed and reduced because he controlled the gray mist. And after his spiritual consciousness was completely exposed to this gray mist, Jason also completely felt the terrifying power contained in this gray mist. It was a destructive force. Even with Jason's power, once it came into contact, I am afraid that it will be difficult to escape the fate of death. At the same time, Jason's powerful elixir knowledge was fully displayed, and he could sense the formation of these gray mist. However, to Jason's disappointment, with his current strength comparable to that of a 9th level peak elixir master, it is impossible to analyze these gray fogs that are similar to elixir factors. In Jason's perception, the origin of these gray fogs is just like their appearance, hazy and indistinguishable. How did these gray fogs form? With emotion in his heart, Jason raised his head and looked into the distance. There, the sky and the earth were gray and his sight was completely blocked, but Jason could feel that in the center, in the core area of the area, there was a pressure that made him extremely palpitating. It came from the ancient gods. Who? Jason waved his hand, and the gray mist he originally controlled suddenly floated out like clouds. At the same time, he also recovered from the state of trance. "McGrady, you." Coming back from his trance, Jason immediately turned his head and wanted to say something to McGrady. However, when he saw the other person's expression, Jason couldn't help but be startled. I saw McGrady not far away, looking at him with a strange look. That look was full of shock, horror, excitement, surprise, and many other emotions, as if the person standing in front of him was not someone else. Jason is an unprecedented monster. Jason, did you control the gray fog just now? Seeing Jason finally looking at him, McGrady immediately trembled with excitement. Yeah, why are you so red? Show me how to control it again, use all your strength. McGrady said nervously. Although Jason was doubtful about McGrady's condition, he still looked at the gray fog in the distance. This gray fog was much larger than the previous one, about the size of a wash basin, and the distance is also nearly 200 meters away from Jason. Under normal circumstances, Jason's spiritual consciousness would not be able to spread that far, but after absorbing the fire law divine chain, Jason's spiritual consciousness could be spread as far as 1,000 meters. Such a distance, it's not that difficult for Jason. Huh. Jason's terrifying spiritual consciousness immediately spread to the gray mist, as if countless transparent threads were draped over it. Under Jason's control, the gray mist suddenly changed Mr. Lee's life. The direction and trajectory floated slowly. It's incredible. This is a miracle, a miracle. Seeing the gray mist really moving under Jason's control, McGrady was trembling with excitement, like an old man who had had a stroke. Jason stopped and looked at him doubtfully. McGrady also looked at Jason and wanted to say something, but he was so excited that he couldn't speak out for a while. After finally calming down, he said, Jason, maybe you are very surprised by my performance. But you don't know how much your ability will help us find fragments of God's law in this gray fog area. I think you also know that this gray fog can be moved with the control method of the spiritual pharmacist. Yes, this is the advantage of elixir masters here. However, ordinary elixir masters often have extremely small distances for the gray mist to move, and the speed of controlling the gray mist is also very slow. Even Bisfa, a 9th level elixir master like Lord MTA, can only control the gray mist 10 meters away at most, and it cannot be too big, and the control speed is extremely slow. But this is enough. With this, there are masters of elixirs like the Master of Pham Tower. Once we go deep into the gray fog area because of the search for the fragments of the divine rule, and encounter danger, although we may not be able to obtain the fragments of the divine rule, at least we can guarantee that we will not die. But you McGrady, there was a bright light shining in his eyes. Jason, in this gray fog area, some fragments of God's rules are often born, but because of the existence of these gray fogs, most of the fragments of God's rules that are born, we can only look at them from a distance, but cannot get them. Even the Master of Pham Tower, although he can control the gray mist, consumes extremely much spiritual energy. We can only give up on some of the fragments of the divine law that are surrounded by a little more gray mist, but now, when I think of Jason, the ability he had shown before made McGrady a complete Shinyo in his heart. Let's go, this is just the periphery of the gray fog area. Master Pham Tower and the others should be deep in the gray fog area. There is a middle zone there where there is no gray fog. Let's go in. McGrady couldn't wait any longer. He took Jia and flew towards the depths of the gray fog area. In the mysterious mist area, in the deepest part of the central area, Jason and McGrady kept dodging some fragments of gray mist and moving forward quickly. As the two of them continued to advance, more and more gray fog was floating in the air. In the end, the entire world was covered with dense gray fog. However, although there were many gray fogs, there were gaps between them, and there were no gaps between them. Rather than completely blocking it, connecting these gaps creates a curved channel. At such a place, McGrady and Jason also slowed down. The two of them carefully observed a passable passage while moving forward. Flying through this place full of terrifying gray fog is indeed an extremely dangerous thing. Jason and McGrady, flexibly interspersed, moved up and moved down at high speed, etc., cleverly avoiding one after another. Danger zone. At this moment, Jason and McGrady were dancing on the tip of a knife, extremely dangerous. However, there was no fear in the hearts of the two of them. First, because of their strength and extremely high control, this travel, there was no mistake in his movements. Sometimes he simply dodged against the gray fog. Secondly, even if he encountered danger, Jason could control the gray fog and create a safe path. However, Jason did not control the gray mist indiscriminately, because Jason discovered that when controlling the gray mist, the black weird power in his body would be greatly consumed. This black weird power was not in much quantity and required a running spirit. Divine secrets can be produced slowly and must be used sparingly. Moreover, whether it is the god of war technique or the god-destroying killing technique, they all need to be driven by this black weird power. Once the black weird power is exhausted, Jason's strength will be greatly reduced. Right in front, McGrady suddenly said with joy during the flyby. Jason glanced around and saw an area at the end of his sight. The originally dense gray fog had disappeared. It was an empty area, like a strange space belt, separated by this large gray fog area. Obviously there is no danger in that area. Whoosh! Whoosh! Jason and McGrady moved in tandem, carefully and slowly moving towards the space zone. Boom! However, at this moment, suddenly, a few hundred meters away from Jason, a ray of blue light rose into the sky, and the terrifying aura spread instantly, reaching Jason and McGrady. This is like Jason Tunn looked at the other side in surprise, and saw a piece of cyan debris rising into the sky a few hundred meters away from the two of them. This is a fragment that is only about the size of the little finger cap. It is completely blue. On it, mysterious and profound runes are constantly flowing, containing the aura of the Great Avenue, and a faint divine power is diffused from it. This cyan fragment was suspended several meters above the ground, blooming with the most brilliant light. It's a fragment of the wood element. Sensing the rich wood element emanating from the cyan fragment, Jason's heart suddenly showed surprise. McGrady has always said that the probability of God's law fragments appearing in this gray fog area is much greater than that of the outer periphery of the central area. However, Jason did not see any God's law fragments along the way. He did not expect that he was about to see a God's law fragment. When they arrived at the safe area of the mysterious mist area, a fragment of the wood-type God's rule unexpectedly appeared. After absorbing the water element divine law fragments and the fire element law divine chain, Jason has understood that if he wants to advance to the 9th level, he must find all 5 divine law fragments in the 5 elements attributes. Now, if he takes the wood element God, if you get the fragments, you will only have earth and metal elements left. I'll go. Jason didn't hesitate at all. He found a passage between himself and the fragment of the wood-type divine law that he could fly through, and slowly moved forward. Jason, be careful, McGrady warned. Jason didn't speak. He looked at the fragment of the wood element with all his heart. At the same time, he used his spiritual consciousness to control the 1 or 2 gray fogs blocking him and moved them in another direction. Suddenly, there was a gap between him and the fragment of the divine element. A complete channel appears. Bang! On the ground below, a creature suddenly rushed out from the ground. It was like cyan lightning and rushed directly towards Jason. Jason was covered in black armor. At this critical moment, he roared and held a black weight in his hand. The sword slashed hard. Pung! The black épée collided with the cyan lightning. Jason's whole body was shaken and he flew back. The black armor on his body was shattered layer by layer. He felt sore and numb, and his whole body retreated backwards. "Jason, be careful." McGrady immediately screamed not far away. Jason was in the gray fog area at the moment. Except for that passage, there was gray fog everywhere. Behind Jason, there were two gray fogs. When Jason retreated, his whole body immediately hit him. "Go up." Not far away, McGrady's eyes widened in horror. Just when Jason was about to hit the two gray fogs suddenly spread to both sides, and the spiritual power in Jason's body also spat out violently, trying to stop his body. "It's so dangerous." Jason's forehead was covered with beads of sweat, and he exhaled a long breath. In the previous critical moment, he remained calm in the face of danger. Finally, the moment he hit the gray fog, he pulled the two of them together. "Move away the gray mist, otherwise once it hits, the consequences will be disastrous." "What kind of monster is that?" "It's so terrifyingly powerful, and it actually came out of the ground." Jason looked at it solemnly. With Jason's current strength, even though he had taken action in a hurry, ordinary 9th level high-level spiritual beasts might not be able to make him take a step back. However, the cyan lightning from before not only knocked him back, but the power transmitted to him also made Jason the black U armor on Sen's body was all broken. Such strength could only be possessed by at least a 9th level peak spiritual beast. Opposite, the cyan creature looked at Jialai with a cold light in its eyes. "Snake?" Jason said in surprise. "This is a small green snake that is only as big as the palm of your hand. Its body is only as thick as a little finger. It is covered with fine scales, shining with bright light. Its two eyes are like diamonds, crystal clear." No wonder after seeing the size of this little snake, Jason suddenly realized that it came out of the ground. Ordinary spiritual masters who come to this strange spirit fog area think that the underground is safe. They are totally wrong. Yes, in this weird mist area, there is also a lot of gray fog underground, and because of the unobservability of the underground, it is much more dangerous than the surface. Usually no one dares to get into the underground. But this little snake is only the size of a palm, with a thumb thick and thin. It is even more insignificant when curled up. Even if the gray fog here is dense, it will not be much of an obstacle to it. After all, it is small. Whoosh! The little green snake stared at Jason with cold eyes, and rushed towards Jason again. Just a green phantom, the little green snake came in front of Jason, so fast that Jason was shocked. Buzz! Buzz! Jason didn't hesitate at all. He used the forbidden spirit domain and the water space at the same time to imprison the little snake. At the same time, an unparalleled terrifying power burst out from Jason's body. God of War techniques, War God possession. Boom! The gray light on the black heavy sword in Jason's hand suddenly surged, and it instantly turned into an Optimus pillar, slashing hard at the little green snake. Whoops! Countless lights and shadows shot out from the black heavy sword, turning into a black sword rainbow that filled the sky, and collided with the little green snake. Bang! The little green snake was really hit and was thrown away, with a cloud of blood shooting out from its body. Facing the amplitude of 10 times the combat power of Jason's God of War technique, the little green snake was unable to resist, but what surprised Jason was even under the powerful attack power of the God of War, the little green snake was still not killed. The little green snake did not hesitate and ran away immediately. Humph! Jason snorted coldly, his eyes flashing brightly. Huh! The black heavy sword slashed again, and the black sword shadow filled the sky like a heavy wave, superimposed layer by layer, and finally turned into a void sword shadow, pushing away the layers of air, sending out ripples in the void, passing the body of the little green snake. The heavy sword has no edge and is too clever to work. Yo! The little green snake let out a sharp scream, and its body was directly slashed and flew out, hitting a piece of gray mist not far behind it. The eyes of the little green snake suddenly showed an extremely frightened light. That humanized look of fear made Jason feel the panic in the little green snake's heart, as if it was falling into an endless abyss. Chi-chi! As soon as Huiying came into contact with the body of the little green snake, he immediately wrapped around its tail, and its tail turned into fresh powder almost instantly. Phew! After the tail of the little green snake turned into powder, its body suddenly grew in size, and suddenly turned into a big green snake that was dozens of feet long and nearly 10 feet in diameter. The body of this big green snake was expanding. In the process, he inevitably came into contact with countless gray fogs again. Chi-chi! Countless gray fog directly wrapped around the big blue snake. Because of the severe pain, the big blue snake's body, which was dozens of feet long, started to beat wildly, and even let out a shrill roar from its mouth. However, its shrill roar could only be shouted out in time. Then one by one, pung! Its huge body, which was dozens of feet long, was directly wiped out into nothingness by the entanglement of gray mist, and not even the spiritual core was left. This gray mist, Jason's heart twitched fiercely. Although he had never McGrady had already heard about the horror of the gray mist, but he had not actually seen it. The scene now completely shocked Jason's heart. You must know that this big green snake, possessed by his god of war, beings that can withstand it, but just because they came into contact with the gray mist, they didn't even have the ability to resist, and turned directly into powder. This Jason's heart was throbbing, and his right hand suddenly stretched out. Call. The cyan wood-type divine element fragment was immediately put into his pocket. The next moment, Jason did not hesitate and rushed directly towards the safe space in the center of the gray fog not far away. Jason, what did you just say? Scared me. In the safe area, McGrady said with heart palpitations on his face. Haha. Jason smiled and rushed into the safe zone. He was about to say something, but suddenly, he seemed to feel something, and his body suddenly stopped. His whole person was stunned as if struck by thunder, with a look in his eyes. He looked forward in disbelief. The moment Jason just entered the safe zone, an inexplicable feeling floated in Jason's heart. It was a faint call, summoning Jason to move forward and let Jason. Jason couldn't help being shocked and excited. In Jason's mind, the rotation speed of the 4 spirit beads increased at the same time, seeming to be extremely excited. At the same time, the terrifying fire spiritual power refined in Jason's body after absorbing the fire law divine chain, it was also boiling slightly, and the 15 strange runes in it were constantly swimming. Jason is extremely familiar with this feeling of calling. He has felt it 4 times before, when he was using the golden spirit bead in the divine medicine palace, the wood spirit bead in the secret realm of the spirit pond, the earth spirit bead in the Tianqian mountain, and the Shui spirit bead in the Shuiling palace. When beads. Fire spirit pearl, definitely fire spirit pearl. Jason's expression did not change, but his heart was filled with turmoil. He could no longer remain calm, and looked towards the battlefield of the gods with shock in his eyes. The deepest part, the interior of the endless gray mist. In the safe area, Jason was completely stunned under the mysterious call. His eyes were full of shock. He raised his head and looked through the heavy gray fog, which seemed to penetrate into the battlefield of the gods. Deepest. Is the fire-cold pearl at the deepest part of the battlefield of the gods? Jason clenched his fists tightly and murmured in his heart. At this moment, Jason had the urge to rush deeper into the gray fog zone behind the safe zone. Who? 2 streams of light swept over from a distance like lightning, exuding a terrifying aura of spiritual power. They were obviously attracted by the divine aura when the fragment of the wood element god was born here. These 2 powerful auras immediately woke Jason up from his shock. The spiritual god art in his body was running rapidly, and the black heavy sword was raised in his hand. His whole person was full of vigilance. In the deepest part of the central area of the battlefield of the gods, there are dangers everywhere. If you are not careful, you will fall here. There is no room for Jason to be distracted at all. On the side, McGrady, I am also on high alert. However, when they saw the 2 figures flying past, their faces suddenly showed surprise. This farm, Leona. the two shouted at the same time. The two figures flying past were none other than the master of the alchemist Tabus Farm Tower and the city master of Dawn City Leona. Jason McGrady. The two Bispham people, who were attracted by the divine aura exuded by the birth of the wood-type god's fragment, also expressed surprise after seeing Jason and McGrady. He shouted loudly and quickly landed in front of Jason. "You two have finally arrived, haha." The four of them looked at each other and laughed happily. Who? At this moment, several sharp sounds pierced the air. In the distance, several figures exuding a terrifying aura flew past like lightning. In an instant, that's when the four Jasons arrived. Huh? These are 5 powerful men with extraordinary momentum. Each of them has a terrifying spiritual power rising into the sky. When they meet, an indescribable terrifying murderous aura ripples. 9 pairs of eyes, as if scanning 9 like sharp blades, they collided with each other, causing sparks to burst out. "Is it you?" After the leading man saw Jason, a sneer suddenly appeared on his lips. On the side, there was an extremely resentful look at Jason in the crowd. His naked murderous intention made everyone present. People are clearly audible. These 5 people turned out to be the Master of Atkinson Tower of the Spiritual Master Tower, Holy Master Strier of the Cairo Empire, Holy Master Cumberbatch of the Buffing Empire, and 2 9th-level senior Holy Spirit Masters who were cultivating on the mainland, Weiss. Kurt and Bold, at some point, actually colluded with the Spirit Master Tower. For a moment, the atmosphere on the field was extremely heavy, and the air seemed to have solidified. Everyone drew their weapons and looked at each other coldly. It was obvious that if there was any movement, a huge battle would break out between the two sides. "Jason, I didn't expect that you, a small 9th-level intermediate Holy Spirit Master, would dare to come to this central area. You are really looking for death. Master Atkinson Tower, in this case, I think we should take action and kill them. All 4 of them stay here." Holy Lord Cumberbatch looked at Jason, with crazy murderous intent on his face, wanting to swallow Jason in one gulp. As Cumberbatch's words fell, Holy Lord Strayer and others also looked at Bispham and others with vigilance. As soon as Atkinson Tower Master gave instructions, everyone would take action. "Humph, it's up to you," Jason said coldly, looking at the other person with a sneer on his face. The 3 Bispham people had solemn expressions on their faces, and their spiritual energy was surging crazily in their bodies. If anything happened, they would launch the most violent attack. "You brat, you dare to speak harshly when you are about to die. Today, I will avenge the many disciples of our kamikaze empire." Cumberbatch gritted his teeth, his eyes were cold, and he rushed toward Jason like lightning. Huh. However, at this critical moment, the figure of Atkinson Tower Master suddenly flashed and stopped in front of Holy Master Cumberbatch. "Cumberbatch, this is the battlefield of the gods. The purpose of our coming here is to get the fragments of the divine spider, not to kill people. Don't be impulsive," Master Atkinson Tower said indifferently. "Master Atkinson Tower." Cumberbatch looked at Atkinson in shock. "Humph, let's go." Atkinson ignored Cumberbatch's astonished gaze, snorted coldly, and immediately turned into a stream of light and flew away towards where he came from. Whoosh! Whoosh! Strayer and others naturally followed closely behind. "Damn it!" Cumberbatch looked at Jason and said fiercely. Although he couldn't wait to kill Jason, without the support of the Atkinson Tower Master, he could only turn into a stream of light and catch up with Ash Elson et al. Looking at the disappearing figures of Atkinson Tower Master and others, the people in Bispham could not help but exhale. Although these Spham have advanced to the 9th-level peak, Atkinson Tower Master has reached the 9th-level peak for nearly 100 years, and his strength is unfathomable. Coupled with Strier and others, each of them has extraordinary strength, and the two sides are fighting. At hand, no one can easily suppress the opponent, and it can easily lead to a lose-lose situation for both parties. As Bispham and Jason are 9th level elixir masters, they have an advantage in searching for fragments of divine laws in this battlefield of gods. Naturally, they will not have a fight here because of the hostility between the two sides. This will inevitably lead to some losses outweighing the gains. Master Atkinson Tower, why didn't we take action before? In the safe area, several streams of light pierced the sky, and Cumberbatch flew to Atkinson's side and spoke unwillingly. Previously, there were 5 people on our side, and you, the 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master, were in charge. Bispa's side had only 4 people, and Jason was only an intermediate 9th level person. This time it's not like in Cairo. In the Empire's decisive battle, without the intervention of Philea, a 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master, if we had taken action, we would have been able to kill Bisfamu and the others without leaving anyone behind. Cumberbatch looked at Atkinson with dissatisfaction on his face, beyond words. Back then, when he was in the Cairo Empire, Cumberbatch wanted to kill Jason. That time, Bispham and others were all seriously injured and almost died. However, because of Philea's obstruction and the belief that Bispham was could not survive for long, Atkinson did not take advantage of the victory and followed Cumberbatch's words to annihilate Bispham and the others in the Cairo Empire. Unexpectedly, Bispham not only did not die, but recovered and entered the Cairo Empire. The battlefield of the gods. This time, the two sides met again. Cumberbatch advocated a fight, but the master of Atkinson Tower retreated again, which made him very angry. Not only Cumberbatch, but also Strier and others were suspicious, and their previous actions were not at all like the style of Atkinson Tower Master. Do you think that if we fought before, we would definitely win? Atkinson looked at the other party and said coldly. Is there any accident? Cumberbatch said disdainfully, 3 of them are 9th level senior Holy Spirit Masters, and Jason is only a 9th level intermediate Holy Spirit Master. Could it be that the 5 of us can't defeat it if we join forces? A 9th level senior Holy Spirit Master? Atkinson Tower Master shook his head with a hint of solemnity in his eyebrows. If it was more than a year ago, then Bispham must be, but now what? AI? Jean-son, what you mean is that Bispham has Strier's expression suddenly changed. I'm not sure, but it's very likely. Master Atkinson Tower shook his head. I don't know Bispham better. Although he has not completely released his breath just now, but based on my understanding of him, I understand that this time he joined the battlefield of the gods, he has a completely different temperament from before. I very much doubt that he is already a 9th level Holy Spirit Master. The hearts of Holy Lord Strier and others were completely sinking at this moment. Down. Okay, don't think so much, let's look for the fragments of the God's Law. Although Bispham and the others have certain advantages as elixir masters, they can't do whatever they want in this grey fog area. As long as we find enough with the fragments of God's Law, he can completely kill them. A cold light flashed between Atkinson's brows, and his eyes were full of perseverance. Nowadays, there are many powerful people on the mainland. Whether it is Bispham from the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, Hymes, the strongest person in Iceland, or Philea, who has not even entered the battlefield of the gods, they are all 9th level Holy Spirit Masters. None of them can let Atkinson ignore it. Atkinson wants to overpower everyone and unify the continent. Only absolute strength can do it. Under such circumstances, the most urgent thing in Atkinson's heart is to get more fragments of the god here, and to be promoted to demigod, and even to the 10th level spiritual god. As for the rest, he has completely forgotten about it. Moreover, at least in the current situation, he is still in an advantage. Although Bispham and Hyams are also 9th level peak Holy Spirit Masters, they have been promoted recently, and he has been a peak Holy Spirit Master for nearly 100 years, and has accumulated far from being comparable to Bispham and the others. The only threat is that Philea, who is stronger than him, has not even entered the battlefield of gods. If you ask who is most likely to advance to demigod or even spiritual god this time, it is definitely him. Atkinson. Jason, now the 4 of us are together. By the way, how did you two meet? In the open space before, the four of Bisfam were talking to each other. That's what happened. When I was rushing to the ghostly fog area, I suddenly felt a strong divine aura. Then I said, in my heart, McGrady was about to meet Jason, and carefully, he said it for a while. So that's it. Indeed, in this battlefield of gods, everyone can meet together. I'm afraid most of them are, because of the birth of the fragment of the god's law. The master of Bisfam Tower nodded. They were able to meet Jason because of the divine aura coming from here. Haha, Bisfam, Leona, you don't know, before I met Jason, Jason first encountered the Lord of Sin City, Scott, and even fought for his son for the fragment of the divine law that was born. McCready said with a smile again. What? Have a cup with that, Scott. Jason, are you okay? Bisfam and Leona were both taken aback and looked at Jason hurriedly, although Jason was in front of them at the moment. It was safe and sound, but when thinking about Scott, the Lord of Crime, Leona, and the others still felt a little worried. Haha, what can happen to Jason? Guess what happened later? McGrady said with a weird smile on his face. The result? Leona looked at McGrady's weird smile and couldn't help but frown and said, Did Jason manage to repel that Scott? Repelled? Haha. McGrady couldn't bear it. She laughed and said, Leona, you underestimate Jason too much. After this god's birthday is over, Sin City will probably be removed from the 9 major forces. What? Leona's eyes widened and she looked at Jason in surprise. McGrady, what do you mean? That's right, Scott, he has been killed by Jason. McGrady directly said to Leo. A bombshell dropped in the hearts of Na and Bisfam, which almost knocked them unconscious. Jason, is what McGrady said true? Bisfam looked at Jason with disbelief. Although he knew more about Jason's strength than others, he wanted to kill Scooter, the Lord of Crime. Something like this really shocked him. Although he could do it with his current strength, it was impossible to do it a year ago, before he advanced to the 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master. Yeah. Jason smiled and nodded without saying anything more. This, Leona stared at Jason in stunned silence, not knowing what to say. So, we didn't need to be afraid of Atkinson and the others before. Fortunately, they didn't act recklessly. Otherwise, if they couldn't eat, we would have to keep it secret, McGrady sneered. Okay, now that everyone is gathered, let's set off now to find the fragments of the god's law in this gray fog area. Bisfam said with a bright light in his eyes. Master Bisfam Tower. I want to know, where is this deep place? At this moment, Jason suddenly spoke out, looking into the depths of the thick gray mist. This deep? Bisfam glanced at the direction Jason was looking and said, Jason, the deepest part of this gray fog area is the core area that Master Brought said. Jason clicked, nodding, Master Bisfam Tower, I want to go to the core area of the battlefield of the gods. Jason's voice was not loud, but when it fell into the ears of Bisfam and others, it was like a thunderbolt from the blue. What? Jason, are you crazy? No. The 3 Bisfam people exclaimed almost at the same time. Bisfam frowned deeply and looked at Jason with piercing eyes. Jason, I don't know why you want to enter the core area, but I hope you can think clearly about the dangers of this core area. The extent is beyond your imagination. At this point, the eyes of the master of Bisfam Tower seemed to be lost in memories, and there was a trace of pain in his eyes. I have entered this core area once before. It was 200 years ago. 2 friends and I entered the core area. In just a moment, 2 of the 3 of us died. I was the only one who escaped by retreating to the central area at the last moment. It was really terrible inside. Not to mention me, even a strong demigod would most likely perish after hearing this. After Bisfam's words, Jason couldn't help but fell silent. Jason, it's not that I have to stop you from going, it's just that it's too scary there and I don't want you to die. Bisfam said sincerely. No, I must go to that core area. Jason's words made Bisfam and the others' expressions change, but Jason's next words made Bisfam's expressions soften. I must go to this core area, but not now. Jason raised his head and said. Although the smell of fire was extremely tempting to him, judging from the performance of the master of Bisfam Tower, Jason knew the horror of the core area of the group. You know, the current Bisfam Tower Master is a 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master, and the Atkinson Tower Master, who is also a veteran 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master, do not dare to go to the core area, which shows the danger. Degree. In the core area, there is a complete chain of laws and gods. Don't they want to become gods? The answer is obvious, but the actions of Atkinson and the Master of Bisfam Tower have to make Jason vigilant. When he first entered the battlefield of the gods, the killing god Brat said that the most dangerous place in the battlefield of the gods is where even the strongest men at the god level will fall. Obviously, he was talking about the core area. However, Jason will not give up the fire spirit orb either. The battlefield of the gods has been open for a full year, and now less than 2 months have passed. Jason is fully able to search for fragments of the gods' rule in this gray fog area and advance to the 9th level. After reaching the advanced Holy Spirit Master level and then entering the core area, the chance of success will be greater. Thinking of this, Jason took out the fragment of the wooden god's law that he had obtained before. This is a fragment of the wood element's divine law. Under the surprised gazes of Bisfam and others, Jason drove the fragment of the wood element's divine law into his body with all his strength. Chi-Chi. The power of the wood element, which contains the terrifying and mysterious power of the wood element, melted rapidly in Jason's body, and then was completely absorbed. Finally, a cyan rune was melted out from the fragment of the god's law, and the water element was absorbed. The god was like fragments, and the cyan runes were absorbed by the wood spirit beads. When the wood spirit pearl absorbed the runes, Jason also felt that some detailed words and pictures appeared in the wood spirit pearl. Unfortunately, the power of the runes was too sparse and did not appear enough for Jason to see clearly. Okay. Let's go find new fragments of the divine code. After absorbing the fragments of the wooden divine code, Jason spoke without hesitation. After absorbing the fragments of the 3 elements, he now only needs 2 elements, the metal element and the earth element, to be able to advance to the 9th level. Who? In the safe zone of the ghostly fog zone, Jason and others flew past quickly, looking for the fragments of the god's rule. Not only Jason and the others, but all the strong men in the gray fog area were seizing the time, not daring to waste any time, looking for the divine fragments of their respective attributes. Time passed like this little by little, and Jason and the others were completely integrated into the difficult process of finding the fragments of the god's law. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, in the blink of an eye, 8 months passed. Wow! In the strange spirit fog area, astonishing energy dispersed, and a large area of gray fog, like a tide, was constantly rising and falling, rippling in the void, blooming with terrifying murderous intent. This is the deepest place in the central area. There is a lot of gray fog, which fills almost every corner, making it difficult to move. The strange fog area is the last barrier in the central area. After passing through this strange fog area, you will enter the core area of the battlefield of the gods. Therefore, the deeper you go into the central area, the more gray fog there is. In the end, countless gray fogs were connected into one piece, forming an obstacle like a natural moat. This is an inaccessible place. Unless they want to enter the core area, few spiritual masters come here. Although the possibility of unearthing fragments of the divine law here is much higher than outside, because of the danger of this environment, it is like it's a forbidden area. Boom! However, a moment later, in the deepest area of the central area, an extremely fierce battle was taking place. The astonishing roar resounded across the sky and the earth, and the overwhelming spiritual power shocked the 9 heavens and 10 earth. Destroy everything. A Gundam figure with a fiery red body and flames on his body, holding a flaming whip that was more than 10 feet long, kept roaring, swinging the whip crazily in his hand, and wherever he passed, the void continued to ripple. This is a humanoid fire demon, a hellfire demon, with terrifying strength beyond ordinary 9th-level peak Holy Spirit Masters. Once such a terrifying fire demon appears in Stern Continent, it will be a disaster, causing poison for thousands of miles and leaving corpses everywhere. Everywhere. However, at this moment, such a powerful hellfire demon was surrounded by 4 figures exuding terrifying auras. It was in a state of panic, roaring repeatedly, and the flame whip kept swinging. It wanted to escape from here, but it was impossible to retreat. Retreat. On its body, countless flames kept spraying, like blood, spraying crazily. Roar. The hell flame demon roared crazily, a long river containing the breath of destiny, a holy sword shining with divine light, a beam of light containing a rich breath of life, and a black heavy sword, slashing wildly on it. No matter how powerful the hell flame demon is, it can only block 1 or 2 blows at most. The rest of the attacks are mercilessly hitting its body surface. Every time a blow falls, there is an astonishing roar. And roars of pain. Okay, this hell flame demon is almost dead. Under our attack, it has been unable to recover and is scarred. Let's take action together and kill it. A vicissitudes of voice sounded on the battlefield. Kill. Sigh of the Dawn Goddess. Blade of Destiny. Hand of Life. 3 low shouts with boundless majesty resounded between heaven and earth. The next moment, 3 terrifying attacks containing monster spiritual power were launched. Like the long embankment collapsing and the flood rushing into the sky, it violently washed over the body of the hell demon. Roar. The skin on the hell Balrog's body began to crack. Countless flames and sparks flew in all directions. A crackling sound rang out. The hell Balrog held in pain. The everlasting sharp flames on its body, at this moment, actually, it started to go out. Death. Finally, a roar like thunder resounded throughout the world. Amidst the roaring thunder, a huge black heavy sword seemed to be packed with a huge force, slashing down hard and landing on the hell flame. The devil's head. Bang! Amidst the huge roar, the hell flame demon finally roared in pain, and the whole thing exploded, turning into countless flames that scattered in all directions. However, before the hell flame demon's exploded body fell, an invisible force power suddenly enveloped the area, and the next moment, a huge pillar of flame law that was more than 10 feet long was extracted at once, and then fell into a pair of powerful hands. At the same time, on the other side, a pair of hands also held a fiery red fragment of the divine code that shone with divine aura. Another fire element fragment. Jason, I'll give it to you. The old man who was holding the fragment smiled lightly and threw the fire fragment directly into Jason's hand. These 4 people are none other than Jason, who is constantly searching for fragments of the God's law in the mysterious mist area. After Jason decided to stay in the central area to search for the fragments of the god, 8 months passed in the blink of an eye. During these 8 months, Jason and the others did not pause at all. They were looking for the fragments of the god's rule every day. Although most of the time, they were just searching blindly, but the 8 months also gave them a lot of achievements. Harvest. Because this is deep in the central area, the probability of the emergence of fragments of the god is extremely high. After Jason and the 4 of them join forces, they have extraordinary strength. Even if they encounter powerful spiritual beasts, they are fearless. Here in 8 months, they found a total of more than 10 fragments of the divine law. Among them, the 5 elements have the largest number of fragments of the divine law, and Leona and McGrady also have their own gains. Leona, who is of the light system, received 2 fragments of the divine law of the light system. McGrady, a rare destiny spiritualist, also received a fragment of his own destiny system. Only the Spam Tower Masters of the Life System have not found a fragment of the Life System's divine law in the past 8 months, which is extremely regrettable. But the most regrettable thing is Jason. At the beginning, Jason had already obtained fragments of the divine rules of the water, wood, and fire elements, and was only missing the gold and earth elements. However, in the past 8 months, Jason had obtained fragments of the divine rules of the wood, water, and water elements. I have obtained 2 fragments of the God's Code, Fire-type God's Code fragments, and even Gold-type God's Code fragments. Only one of the Earth-type God's Code fragments has not been found until now. This also led to the fact that in addition to the spiritual power of the Earth element, the spiritual power of the other 4 major attributes in Jason's body had reached a saturation level. Jason could feel that as long as he found an Earth element of God, with the fragment, he would definitely be able to advance to the 9th level, but it was this fragment of the Earth-type God's rule that he had been struggling to obtain. Jason sighed helplessly after putting this fire element fragment into the God of War tower. Now, almost 10 months have passed since the day of God's birthday began. There are still 2 months left before the day of God's birthday ends. However, Jason has been unable to advance to the 9th level and cannot enter the core area. The fire spirit pearl made him quite anxious. Look for another month. If I still can't get the Earth-type God's rule fragments and advance to the 9th level in 1 month, I won't care. I must enter the core area and get the fire spirit before the end of the God's birthday. Pearl. Jason secretly made up his mind. It's really hard to find the fragments of my life system's divine law. Looking around the gray fog area, Bispham couldn't help but sigh. As a spiritual master of the life system, he is too rare. In terms of harvest, Bispham is the only one among the 4 people present who has not harvested the fragments of the divine law. Bispham, in the last 2 months, even the fragments of my destiny system have been found. I don't believe that I can't find your life system. McGrady comforted him. In terms of rarity, this destiny spiritual master is no more extensive than Bispham. Okay, I'm just talking. Bispham smiled, without any frustration on his face. Well, don't waste time, let's go look elsewhere. Jason said. Okay. Everyone nodded and followed Jason, walking forward in the gray fog area. Boom. Suddenly, a terrifying wave of spiritual power came. In the distant sky, a pillar of light rose into the sky like an eruption of a mountain. The terrifying aura spread instantly and was transmitted to Jason and the others. What? Jason and the others looked from a distance, and saw a bright glow rising from the ground deep in the endless gray fog area, like a sky pillar, towering into the sky. This is the eruption of the Tianzhu. What a terrifying Tianzhu aura. What attribute of the God's Law fragment is born? Looking at the Tianzhu's aura, there should be more than one God's Law fragment born there. Bispham and others were all excited. In this strange spirit fog area, when most of the God's rule fragments are born, there is only a glow of their own attributes, which is short and fast. This is the divine aura brought out by the God's rule fragments when they are born. In addition, there is another spectacle in this strange mist area, which is the eruption of the Tianzhu. The so-called Tianzhu eruption refers to the divine radiance that emerged from the ground before a large number of divine fragments were born, forming a strange scene. Once the Tianzhu erupts, it means that in ancient times, a large number of God-level powerhouses died in that area, and now, the fragments of gods left behind by these powerhouses after their death are about to be born. However, most Tianzhu eruptions occur in the deepest part of the gray fog area, where there is a large amount of huge and dense gray fog. Even Jason, who can control the gray fog, has a hard time getting deep into it. But now, on the outskirts of the gray fog area, a sky pillar erupted, making everyone feel happy and sad. Jason, lead the way, let's go. Bispham said coldly. Immediately, without any hesitation, everyone turned into 4 streams of light. Under the leadership of Jason, they searched for the passage of the gap and flew quickly towards the place where the pillar erupted. Whoosh! 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 4 streaks of light streaked across the sky and came to the place where Tianquang erupted. Here, it's actually in a safe area. Bispham couldn't help but be surprised. This time the Tianzhu eruption was only 100 meters away from the safe area. Such a situation is extremely rare. Bispham and the others have participated in many gods' birthday days, and this is the first time. Encountered. Bright rays of light continuously spewed out from the ground, forming a shining pillar of light in the sky, exuding a terrifying aura. At this moment, there was nothing in the open space where the dazzling rays of light spewed out. But no one doubts that more than one fragment of the god's law will be born here. Wait. Bispham ordered decisively, but before he could finish his words, boom. Infinite spiritual power rolled, and a breath of divinity that was so powerful that it almost filled the entire space was instantly ejected from the ground. The next moment, several strands of light shone with different attributes, like a goddess scattering flowers, from the ground suddenly burst out, and then exploded in all directions. Jason and others were stunned when they saw so many gods in this world. There were too many, really too many. There were more than 10 rays of light, shooting out in all directions and scattered around, shocking everyone. You know, in the previous 8 months of hard search, Jason and the others went through a lot of hardships and encountered countless dangers, and finally got 12 fragments of the god's law. But now, just now, they were sprayed out. The number of fragments of the god's law was much greater than what Jason and the others had spent 8 months searching for. How could Jason and the others not be excited? Whoosh! Among them, 2 rays of light, one black and one white, flew directly towards Jason. Without thinking, Jason stretched out his hand and grabbed it. It turned out to be 2 fragments of the god of light and dark attributes, and he grabbed it. At the same time, McGrady on the side was also quite lucky and got a fragment of the wind element. However, more fragments were scattered around, some in the safe area, and some in the gray fog area, shrouded in a large amount of gray fog. That's it. Xi and Jason's eyes instantly fell on an earthy yellow light in the gray fog area, and his eyes showed excitement. It was an incomplete divine chain of laws, composed of 3 earth-yellow fragments of divine laws. The laws of the earth element bloomed with light, exuding a terrifying divine aura. They were the divine chains of laws of the earth element. The law god chain of the life system, it's incredible. This is the law god chain of the life system. Bispham next to Jason was also shocked. He saw a large amount of gray dust in the gray fog area. In the fog-shrouded area, a divine chain of laws, composed of 7 fragments of divine principles exuding a rich aura of life, was quietly suspended there, emitting a bright light. McGrady and Leona were also extremely shocked. Looking at the more than 10 streams of light scattered everywhere, they were completely stunned. In the gray fog area at this moment, various colors of light were flowing, possess almost all kinds of divine law fragments. Among them, there are some law divine chains, composed of several divine law fragments. Quickly, collect these quickly, McGrady said hurriedly. But when he spoke out, Jason had already taken action. Huh! His figure turned into a stream of light and flew towards the earth law divine chain. At the same time, he reached out with his big hand and handed over a dark law god chain with 5 divine law fragments along the way. Pocketed. Boom. 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 A sharp sound broke through the air. In the distance, 5 figures exuding a terrifying aura flew over like lightning. They were obviously also attracted by the people here before. The strong men attracted by the eruption of Tianzhu. What? The Dark Law Divine Chain. The leading man was the master of Atkinson Tower of the Spiritual Master Tower. The moment he arrived, he saw Jason put the Dark Law God Chain into his bag, with a look on his face. Shock and anger suddenly appeared, and he roared. The next moment, a huge black scythe suddenly appeared in Atkinson's hand, and he struck hard at Jason and the others without any hesitation. Boom! A black light curtain several feet long, packed with terrifying spiritual power, suddenly came to Jason and fell on Jason's head. Go away! Jason yelled coldly, and the black épée thrust out like lightning, colliding heavily with the black light curtain. Bang! In the roar, Jason's figure suddenly stepped back several meters, and taking advantage of this opportunity, the 5 Atkinsons had already arrived in front of Jason and others. Lots of fragments of gods. Cumberbatch and others spoke with excitement in their eyes. Looking at Joe's eyes, scattered fragments of God's law, their bodies trembled slightly. These God's law fragments include almost all kinds of attributes, and many of them are still incomplete divine law chains, which makes them very excited. With these fragments of divine laws and even incomplete divine law chains, they have great hope of being promoted to the 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master, even to being promoted to demigod. In the safe area, Jason's side and Atkinson's side once again faced off coldly. Jason, hand over the fragments of the God's Code that you obtained earlier, and I will let you live. Master Atkinson looked at Jason coldly, and spoke with an unquestionable tone. His eyes were always fixed on Jason's hand, the dark law divine chain that Jason had obtained before. On the top, a blazing light is released from his eyes. As a 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master of the Dark System, the Law God chain in Jason's hand with 5 Dark System Divine Code fragments can completely increase his strength by a large amount. Yeah, breaking through the 9th level peak, how can he not be enthusiastic? Hand over the Law Divine chain? Atkinson, are you kidding me? Jason said coldly, while on the side, Bispham and the others pulled out their weapons and sneered. There were several fragments of the God's Law in the safe area. In the short period of time before, they had been destroyed by McGregor. D and others took it into their pockets. It seems that you are not willing to hand it over, so just die. If you die, all the fragments of the gods here will be ours. This time Atkinson didn't have any nonsense. He spoke coldly. As his words fell, he took action brazenly. Boom! A terrifying spiritual power burst out from his body, and the black mist filled the sky, like dark clouds covering the sky, covering the entire world. The next moment, the black sickle in Atkinson's hand suddenly shot out. The mysterious laws of spiritual power lingered around the huge dark scythe. Amid Atkinson's angry shouts, with overwhelming power, they aimed at Bispham's location and struck hard. The huge scythe jaundied, dark chains of law flying around it, and a terrifying torrent of spiritual power swept directly towards Jason. At the same time as Atkinson Tower Master launched an attack, on the side, Holy Master Cumberbatch and others also took action brazenly. The golden sword cuts through the void. Earth element cage. The world of fire. Wandering thousands of miles. The 4 Striers took action at the same time, and their fierce attacks rushed towards the 3 Bispham people like lightning. Among them, the Strier Lord faced off against McGrady, and Cumberbatch faced off against Lee. Una, the remaining Westcott and Boulder attacked the Master of Bispham Tower at the same time. The 4 of them wanted to completely block the Bispham trio and buy time for Atkinson Tower Master to kill Jason. Boom! At this moment, the world was violent. Terrible ripples appeared in the void, like a lake disturbed by stones. The whole world seemed to be doomed, and the world was in chaos. Want to kill me? Facing the attack from Atkinson Tower Master, Jason sneered again and again. A 5-color rainbow suddenly bloomed from his body, and 6 5-color light beams spurted out from Jason's body. The terrifying power rolled, and Jason's eyes divine light bloomed in his eyes, and the black heavy sword in his hand thrust out like lightning, directly colliding with the torrent of spiritual power struck by Atkinson Tower Master. Boom! The next moment, an earth-shattering explosion sounded throughout the world. A huge roar resounded throughout the world, and the terrifying spiritual power like a volcano erupting spewed out crazily and spread in all directions. Amidst the deafening thunder, Jason and Atkinson Tower Master stepped back several meters at the same time, and they were evenly matched. What? Looking at Jason, who was unharmed and without any scars on his body, the owner of Atkinson Tower couldn't help but exclaimed. Not only him, but even Cumberbatch and others who were watching here stared at him. Round. Who is Atkinson? That was the master of the spiritual master pagoda. It had been 100 years since he reached the peak of the 9th level. In addition, with the 2 dark-type divine law fragments found in the battlefield of the gods this time, with half a foot, he had already entered the realm of demigods. A strong man, and what about Jason? He was just a 9th level intermediate Holy Spirit Master, but he was evenly matched against Atkinson Tower Master. Such a scene shocked everyone. Kill. Faced with the surprise of Atkinson Tower Master, Jason narrowed his eyes slightly, with endless fighting intent blooming in his eyes. He was the first to take action towards Atkinson's location. The strange black heavy sword, like a black lightning, tore through the sky and came to Atkinson in an instant, spurting out irresistible spiritual power. The 5 elements are born and destroyed one day, and the earth is shattered. You brat, you're looking for death. Atkinson shouted angrily, and swung the huge black scythe fiercely. In an instant, countless black knife shadows appeared in the void. These knife shadows were layered one on top of another, and finally turned into one. The black light exploded and struck directly on the black heavy sword in Jason's hand. Boom! A huge roar sounded, and both Jason and Atkinson backed away again. While Jason and Atkinson Tower Master were fighting, a fierce battle was also taking place on the other side. McGrady, Leona, Streer, and Cumberbatch, they were all old rivals. They used their full strength to fight. For a while, they were evenly matched. Their momentum surged and they were indistinguishable. However, Bispham on the battlefield against Westcott and Boulder, the scene was one-sided. Get out of my way. Facing the joint attack of Westcott and Boulder, Bispham sneered. The life force in the sky dispersed, and his whole figure seemed to turn into a blue sun. The spiritual core at the head of the blue spiritual staff in his hand bloomed with dazzling light, and it fiercely swept forward the joint attacks of Westcott and Boulder. Boom! Amidst the huge roar, ripples appeared in the void, and the terrifying spiritual power spread out like a sea. Westcott and Bold stepped back heavily at the same time, their faces pale, and the corners of their mouths overflowed. A trace of blood. What? 9th level peak Holy Spirit Chong, both of them spoke gloomily, with a trace of horror deep in their eyes. The news that Bispham had become a 9th level peak Holy Spirit Master also made Cumberbatch and others feel a sinking feeling in their hearts. Although, based on Atkinson's original guess, they had already made some preparations in their hearts, but when they really found out after Bispham advanced to the 9th level, he couldn't help but be surprised. At the beginning, in Cumberbatch's plan, a few of them entangled Bispham and the others, and then let the master of Atkinson Tower quickly kill Jason and then support themselves. The entire battle situation was completely settled, but now, Jason's power has completely failed their wishful thinking, and Bispham's super strength has made the balance of the battle tilt towards Jason's side. Earth Element Cage. Faced with this difficult situation, Divine Wind Lord Cumberbatch suddenly flashed a gleam in his eyes. Buzz. A khaki light was suddenly released from his body, covering a distance of several thousand meters. The earth elements in the entire sky and earth quickly condensed, instantly forming a huge khaki ball, covering Bispham. Moo, Jason and others were all wrapped up in it. Master Atkinson Tower, kill Jason quickly. Holy Master Cumberbatch roared. In the huge earth yellow ball, countless earth elements were violently pressing towards everyone present. There was no need for Cumberbatch to remind him. The black scythe in Atkinson's hand had already landed on top of Jason's head. Death cut. Boom. A long black river washed out of the black sickle, like a comet striking the moon and falling from the sky. The powerful spiritual power was overwhelming and engulfed Jason. Facing the powerful attack from Atkinson Tower Master, Jason's face was calm, and a brilliant light suddenly bloomed in his eyes. Buzz. Buzz. 2 unique waves spread out with his body as the center. Water space. Forbidden Spirit Realm. The 2 major realms were released at the same time, breaking Cumberbatch's earth element cage. At the same time, an unparalleled terrifying power burst out from Jason's body. This force, the aura, was so terrifying, with destructive power, that a huge flamed shadow suddenly appeared behind Jason. Virtual God's fire melting technique, Virtual God's invincible fighting technique. Fire lotus burns the sky. A huge flaming lotus quickly appeared in the void, and then was lifted up by the tall phantom, blocking Atkinson's attack. Attack. Boom. A deafening roar sounded. The huge flaming lotus directly broke through the long black river, blasted by Atkinson. Countless black airflows sprayed in all directions. The flame flower rotated, and its 8 petals quietly opened and suddenly came to AI. In front of Jean Sr. What? Atkinson's eyes suddenly widened, full of surprise. However, under the attack of Jason Fire Lotus, he ignored the shock, and the black scythe flew up like lightning, blocking it in front of him. Boom! The terrifying spiritual power rolled, and Atkinson's figure suddenly retreated in the void, and an irresistible terrifying spiritual power poured into his body like a wave. Atkinson groaned and stepped away, his face pale, but his eyes were fixed on Jason, with disbelief in his eyes. Virtual God Fire Melting Technique, isn't this a unique technique of our Spirit Master Tower? He said in surprise, not understanding what was going on. The False God Fire Melting Technique is a powerful technique unique to the Spiritual Master Tower. It is a remnant of the ancient false god and is extremely powerful. In the thousands of years of history of the Spiritual Master Tower, almost no one has been able to successfully practice it. The previous elder of the Master Tower and now the Supreme Elder of the Spiritual Master Tower, Isolde, was the one who succeeded in cultivation. Now that he saw Jason performing it, the Atkinson Tower Master almost didn't dare to look at him. Could it be? The next moment, an idea suddenly came to the mind of Atkinson Tower Master, and he looked at Jason with sharp eyes. Master Atkinson Tower, I got this false god fire melting skill from an old guy named Isolde. I heard that this guy is the Supreme Elder of your Spiritual Master Tower. He has some strength, but unfortunately he is too arrogant, actually attacked me, so I had no choice but to kill him and take away his skills casually. Jason looked at Atkinson and couldn't help but shook his head, with a sneer on his lips. You killed Supreme Elder Isolde? Atkinson's eyes suddenly flashed with a fierce light, and his body was trembling slightly because of his anger. Grand Elder Isolde is older than him, the master of the Spiritual Master Tower, in terms of seniority. When Atkinson was still a core disciple of the Spiritual Master Tower, he gave him a lot of help. In Atkinson's heart, Di Sauter, who had a very high status and was his elder, was actually killed by Jason. In an instant, a monstrous anger burst out from Atkinson's heart. Death, brat, I want you to die. Atkinson gritted his teeth, his eyes suddenly turned red, and he let out an angry roar. A violent, substantive murderous aura erupted from Atkinson's body, and his whole body bloomed. A black light came out. A terrifying aura rose from Atkinson's body. Behind Atkinson, a shadowy figure wearing a cloak and holding a huge scythe slowly appeared. This is an extremely tall phantom, covered with a black cloak, covering his face. From his body, terrifying killing intent is constantly exuding, like a demon god from hell, full of killing intent. Wherever those cold eyes passed, it seemed as if the life of anyone in the world was in his hands. The eyes of death. Atkinson roared, and the eyes of the tall shadow behind him suddenly opened. 2 black aurora containing soul fluctuations shot out from them and flew towards Jason's location like lightning. Go. Whoops. The black aurora filled with gold and terrifying soul fluctuations, like a bolt of lightning, came to Jason instantly. Die. Atkinson Tower Master's eyes were red, and he shouted crazily, with endless coldness in his eyes. It's the eyes of death. Master Atkinson Tower even used the eyes of death. He seems to be completely angry. This Jason is going to be doomed. The eyes of death are the ultimate technique practiced by the ancient death god. This powerful move represents the arrival of the god of death on the continent to dominate life. All those caught by the eyes of the god of death will be deprived of their lives by the god of death. Although this Jason is extraordinary in strength, he absolutely cannot withstand the power of this ancient god of death. A powerful attack, this time it will be fatal. After seeing Atkinson Tower Master using the eyes of death, Cumberbatch and the others, who knew Atkinson and the others quite well, were roaring in their hearts, while McGrady and the others were filled with anger. It was a sudden sinking. Under the gaze of these eyes filled with the aura of death, Jason felt as if he had suddenly arrived in a world of ice and snow. The shadow of death enveloped him, dragging him and causing him to fall into the endless abyss. Not good. Jason was also shocked. At this moment, he actually felt the crisis of death. However, in the face of this extremely huge crisis, Jason's face remained extremely calm. The strange black power and god of war secrets in his body were instantaneous. Get up and running. Boom. A blue figure exuding the aura of Yuan Jin suddenly floated up from behind Jason, like a god standing proudly in the void, bringing endless majesty. God of War technique possessed by the god of war. Boom. The gray light on the black heavy sword in Jason's hand suddenly surged, and instantly turned into an Optimus pillar, shooting two black beams towards the main body of Atkinson Tower. Aurora struck hard,